This video is sponsored by Displate, the source of high quality, high resolution, 3mm thick metal displays of directly printed artwork. More information towards the end of this video, and please find the link and your exclusive discount code in the description below. Greetings, this is Jazz of JazReviews, here to delve into the very strokes of what makes a video game seemingly artistic. This is a top 5 dedicated to the unique visual art styles or art directions adopted by developers to render an aesthetic that goes hand in hand with what a video game is trying to say. But what is art? Who knows? There is nothing more subjective aside from God, perhaps. Please feel free to insert your essays in the comment section below. Moreover, let us see what I think of art and its stylizations within the realms of what we call play. Kicking off at number 5 is one of the first cel-shaded projects to follow in the footsteps of Jet Set Radio. It's The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Considering it was released in 2002, it's impressive how well this game holds up today. Graphics are subject to the swift and ever-changing nature of technology, yet games that hold a unique, solid art direction erode much more slowly. Now, I won't say that Wind Waker hasn't aged, it has, but providing the original's design principles are obeyed, that's what remastered HD versions are for, which help reinvigorate the creative flavors of cel-shaded masterpieces. Cel-shading is the practice of rendering 3D graphics to appear flatter by using fewer gradients and opting for non-continuous shadowing between colors. Its cartoony aesthetic was at the time the pinnacle of cel-shading technology, something that many developers of the early 2000s were looking to incorporate within their games. The series' previous gothic fairy tale stylization was replaced by a far more vibrant palette of strong, bright colors. Its rich environments, cartoony flair of its striking effects, and a simple but gorgeously rendered ocean form a cohesive magic to a world that is full of life, alike to Disney animation. In addition, it's the unique expressiveness of characters that add emotional weight to the story, while the general tone is nearly always cheerful. The problem during its release in 2002 was that despite critical acclaim, it was misunderstood at best, deemed childish and unmarketable to older audiences. But in retrospect, the medium of video games has matured, and its profile has outgrown those who consider video games to be merely a child's activity. Today, you may take in Wind Waker's breezy visuals, all without irony. At number 4 is a title that set the stage as one of the most brilliantly eccentric displays of unbridled badassery. Borderlands 2 is a comic book brought to life. People would liken its technological design to cel-shading. Borderlands is slightly different. Shadowing and lighting are continuous, whilst textures are hand-drawn and coloured through Photoshop before a nice thick black outline is applied to its objects to emulate that staple of cel-shading. But all the same, its art style pops right out at you, drawing emphasis to its characters that are improportionately sized to their magnificent surroundings. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes much more than less can look absolutely incredible. What Borderlands does so well is finding the balance. I'd refrain from throwing out the term minimalist, but there is certainly a level of simplicity etched into much of its design. Yet at times it is complete chaos when, for example, a main boss battle ensues, and the developers know it. All bets are off. Post-punk urban decay rendezvous with truly alien surroundings. Borderlands 2 is not post-apocalyptic, but rather an amalgamation of zany punk, cyberpunk, and even space western elements blended together so that its recipe is particularly unique and at times vague, yet still very pungent. A portion of extra DLC content confuses things even further, but what's clear about the second game is that the art direction was more fully realized and adopted over the first. After all, the first Borderlands witnessed a complete last-minute U-turn in its design from photorealism to the style of Borderlands, or rather a style heavily influenced by the independent film Code Hunters. Thankfully, the creative move paid off in abundance. Contrary to Gearbox's CEO Randy Pitchford's statements about its cartoony aesthetic failing to entertain the masses, something that true art should avoid at all costs. Art should not be subject to democratic vote. It should be absolutely fascist in its creation, which, on a completely unrelated note, is a theme in itself that Borderlands does quite well, and its art style goes some way to soften deeply political overtones, namely fascism. Likewise, it could be argued that extreme violence rendered in a cartoony style is more palatable than if it were done in a photorealist video game. So there's some food for thought while we await another potential classic, Borderlands 3.
That That's right, Slappy.
At number 3, from the works of Psychonauts, Brutal Legend and more, it's Tim Schafer's Grim Fandango. Manny is the Grim Reaper, bearing a fashionable cloak and scythe in the land of the dead.
My name's Manny Calavera. I'm your new travel agent.
His role, to deliver the souls of the living to the land of eternal rest. But it's a lot more bureaucratical than that. The Department of Death deals with the administrative procedures of issuing multi-tiered travel packages to the dead, who make their travels to the afterlife. The travel agency are permitted to fast-track their trip down to just 4 minutes, providing the deceased led a very good life. Otherwise, the level of transport and comfort will depend on how much money they have for a journey that takes 4 years. The entire creative direction of the game is based on Mexican folklore, the idea being that a body should be buried with 2 bags of gold, one upon its chest and the other hidden within the coffin as an insurance against thieves in the afterlife. Aztec dogmas and this notion of the underworld being partially host to a number of criminals in limbo give way to the main narrative framework. The artistic stylization followed. That's why the game is Mexicanally infused, which would have come across as even weirder had I not explained the setting first to those who haven't played Grim Fandango yet. It is a bizarre, surreal scene of various Mexican art motifs, oddly complemented by film noir. Many of the skeletal characters that remain in this world do so out of choice, taking up various jobs, looking the way they do. Their designs inspired by figures from the Mexican Day of the Dead festivities. Their expressions are simple, whereas one characteristic such as long eyelashes is all that it takes to indicate that the character is supposed to be beautiful. The world's architecture spans from Art Deco skyscrapers to Aztec temples, while the seductive allure of film noir fills many of its interiors in a cloud of cigarette smoke. Some scenes were directly inspired by films like Casablanca, and others, the spawn of the weirdest dreams imaginable. Grim Fandango reminds me of a grand tapestry of static, pre-rendered storyboards that Grim is able to insert himself in. The pacing of the game is so leisurely that the game's honest, naked design can be fully appreciated with no real interface. Grim physically turns his head in the direction of any important items or entrances. The game's art direction is endlessly intriguing, its concept thoroughly unique, which is why Grim Fandango retains its legendary status today. At number 2, the unmistakable, gritty, yet stellar vision that is Bioshock. Inspired by the Art Deco styles of the 1930s, the collapsing underwater city of Rapture is reminiscent of a sunken New York, inclusive of the Empire State and Chrysler buildings alongside the rising commercialism of the time. Based around the idealistic philosophy of Ayn Rand's objectivism, Rapture is certifiably utopia turned dystopian. The abstract sets up the city of Rapture to have been designed as a haven occupied by artists, inventors, and scientists to operate within their fields without governmental, religious, and societal pressures hindering their progress during the age of the nuclear bomb. The result, genetic engineering has succeeded to mutate the city's residents who are left with horrible disfigurements, its developers drawing inspiration from plastic reconstructive surgery following the Second World War. Rapture is a city consumed by its vanity. Interiors that were once exuberant displays of wealth and luxury in this dim-lit Atlantis are now flooded by the dread of a sinking Titanic. Art Deco's obsessive hold on perfected architectural lines of verticality and symmetry seem to make this nightmare all the more claustrophobic, trapped by its contemporary ideals and perceptions of the future as the present is laid to waste. At the same time, the principles of Art Deco present the key to Bioshock's seamless level design. Its sharp, geometrically precise principles direct the player's gaze upwards, or help lay out the logical objective path, while high contrasting colors are used to highlight important items or spaces. So far as immersion is concerned, Bioshock's art direction is unrelenting and integral to the very serious themes explored. Bioshock was one of the prime case studies surrounding the debate of whether or not video games could be considered art. Since, Bioshock has stood proudly amongst fellow titles in various museums across the world, while the US Supreme Court deemed the medium entitled to First Amendment protection in 2011. And just before revealing the number 1 spot, a few honorable mentions go out to Okami, Cuphead, and Ori and the Blind Forest. But finally, at number 1, is one of the least traditional video games ever made, Journey. One of the most defining characteristics of Journey is how sand is beautifully depicted and inherently tied to water. Aqua-like creatures comprised of red cloth sparkle and dance as if submerged. Red cloth corals sprout from an apparent seabed. The player, on the other hand, glides across Journey's soft, minimalist deserts and vistas, harnessing the game's powerful source of energy contained within cloth, the artifacts from a past civilization long buried in sand. It is the red cloth that represents life, hope, or even power, which remains the boldest color throughout the game. United with a stunning soundtrack, the color palette in general is exceptionally exercised to deliver a sense of atmosphere. When peaceful, it's low contrast yellows and overcast lighting. During the game's underground/underwater segment, it's the cold colors of blue, cyan, and green to create an ominous, sad, and lonely mood. The darkness necessary in the grander scheme of making that journey, a relatable metaphor of light and its shadow. Journey delicately taps into the volatile nature of weathering systems too, to create for tension or instill a sense of calmness in this wasteland. The ruins that remain are geometrically paper-like, simple by design, simple in detail, never detracting from the overall experience. And so every point of interest or piece of symbolic imagery along the way is elevated through Journey's focused relationship to minimalism and presenting what it has to say in a simple but elegant manner. To me, Journey is a work of interactive art that best invokes an emotional response through self-reflection, observation of natural beauty, and the very question of dealing with the existential, namely death. To you, it might provoke entirely different reactions, and that's why Journey is great. It makes us think. It is the tightly structured art direction that effortlessly draws the player's attention to these questions, without any hand-holding and certainly no objective markers or an obtrusive HUD in sight. Perhaps that's not strictly true. Emphasis of camera angles throughout the journey powerfully direct your gaze towards the mountain's seemingly enlightening summit, the unquestionable end of our journey. But although the player knows exactly where they're going, maybe the end isn't all that important. This has been Jazz of JazReviews with the top 5 most artistic video games. And would you know it, this video has been made possible through the aid of a very relative sponsor, Displate. These are the artworks I ordered, 3mm thick metal displays that are directly printed upon, elevated throughout my place. A displate is a quality piece of artwork sourced from an innumerable selection of designs, often submitted by individual artists looking to find their niche. What this means is that whatever you may think of, there is very likely a displate out there to suit your own individual sense of expression. The designs are high-resolution pieces that serve as the focal point of interest in any room. A displate can be mounted through a very convenient magnet-to-magnet installation. Therefore, when it's up, you can adjust and readjust your displate until it's just right, without having to obsess over precision beforehand. For every displate purchased, 10 trees will also be planted, adding to over 6 million trees already planted across Africa and Central America, which go hand in hand with the Trees for the Future program to the effect of improving environments and helping alleviate poverty. If you're interested, click the link in the description below, and feel free to apply the exclusive discount code my viewers may use for any purchase. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to click that subscribe button and be sure to ring the bell to ensure these videos actually end up in your subscription feed. But this has been Jazz of JazReviews. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the comments.